All right. Hello, readers. Welcome back to Books, Ink, and Paper, and welcome back to our second month of wedding reads and what we read. Essentially, they will be more than maybe just wedding, but we did our Something Old, Something New, Something Borrowed, Something Blue in January, and we just, because of the wedding, didn't have time to do February, March, but the wedding is over, which makes us a little sad because it
But
was.
I'm married
Oh, but
now.
she's married now. She's a married lady. And it was beautiful, and we can talk about that as much as you want. But gosh, it was fantastic. So I have my sweet gift, my mother of the bride wine glass with my wine in it.
Oh, you know what?
You have a bride one, don't you?
I don't, but I do have a Cheers champagne glass that I got from my Miss to Mrs. box.
Oh,
Yep,
nice.
Becca got me, but I don't have champagne. I just have, sangria. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, we both poured a generous pour, didn't we?
Jesse poured my husband poured mine.
Oh, yes, your husband.
He
My
knows that
son-in-law.
Mama likes to drink. So,
I know. I actually called him my son-in-law before the wedding was official, and I was like, "Oh gosh, I just did that, like a little ahead of the game," but it's fine.
oh,
And
it's
so,
super fun.
yeah, it was fun. All right, so let's talk about what we read in February. You want to go first, or shall I?
I can go first.
All
I'm
right.
gonna first of all apologize for the clicking in the background. That's my dog.
Oh,
Just
that's okay.
tapping around. Can you lay down somewhere,
I
maybe?
have Agnes in here roaming around and making, sniffy sounds, and she might cry out.
Yes, yes. Do we want to go like one at a time with like old, new, borrowed, blue,
Old
like
New Borrow
last time?
Blue, and then if there's anything outside of that, go ahead and add it at the end. If it's just Lanyap, really.
I don't have any laying apps. I was too busy. I barely got my four
I was
in.
gonna say you were really busy. I was.
Um, so for February, my something old was The Death of Mrs. Westaway, which was one of my favorite Ruth Wares, and I wanted to reread it. And so I did,
Yeah.
and I loved it just as much. And I actually like I kind of like played the same guessing game that I did the first time around, where because the when I reread it, I couldn't quite remember. I thought I remembered, the how the storyline went, but then I spent so many guesses my first read through that I was like, wait a minute, maybe I have that wrong. And I'm just thinking about what I thought it was and what I thought was going on. But I did have it right, but I still kind of played the same guessing game, which was pretty fun because I
That's
couldn't quite
fun.
remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that one.
Is that one the one about the tarot
The
reader?
tarot reader, yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I love that
Yeah.
one. I need to reread all of those
Yeah,
probably.
if you have not read, well, not you because I know you have, but for viewers, if you have not read The Death of Mrs. Westaway, it is about a young woman who reads tarot cards on the boardwalk for a living. And her mother has passed away, I think about a year ago, maybe, in a sort of tragic, unexpected way. And she gets a letter from, well, she's also dealing with some personal, she's got some people after her because she owes some people money because she's poor, because she's a tarot reader.
Yeah.
um, and she gets a letter from a lawyer that says that her grandmother, her maternal grandmother, has died and left her an inheritance, and she has to go to this house and meet with her family and read the will and whatever. And she looks at the letter and realizes that this is in fact not her maternal grandmother, and she doesn't know this woman at all, and they aren't related, but she kind of needs the money, so she goes to the house to sort of see if she can trick them. But it obviously turns out much deeper than that. That's really good.
Yeah.
I
I
really like it.
do remember that. Yeah. And I just remember her character being pretty quirky.
Mm-hmm.
More quirky maybe than the other Ruth Ware characters have been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like Ruth Ware, I think like all of her main characters are flawed in some way, some
Indeed.
more deeply than others. But this one I really liked. I thought, like her flaws were kind of due to her circumstances. And I
Right.
felt for her the whole time. I really enjoyed her, where I don't always enjoy the main characters in Ruth Ware's books, but this one I really did. And I liked the tarot aspect too, because of course, I'm a big fan of the tarot.
Me too.
So yeah, I liked it a lot. I was glad to reread it.
All
Been wanting
right.
to for a while.
So
It was
my
fun.
something old, I had a couple that I could have used, but I ended up with, I actually have a physical copy of it. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. I'm so excited I finished this. I feel like this was toleration that I was holding on to because I'd gotten it so many years before and really wanted to read it and just never did. It was also part of my Mardi Gras readathon. So this was a book about parties or balls. And I enjoyed it. It was, I'm trying to remember I guess I should say what I gave it. You don't rate, but I do.
I don't.
Okay.
I feel like I started Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and I could not get very far into it.
Yeah. So I gave it 4 stars. It is different than I thought. Here's why I gave it 4 stars. I really thought it was really about this character whose name was Jim something. I should know this by now. And he was kind of an eccentric guy who had this man that lived in his house with him, and the man was a drug addict and just kind of this loose guy about town, just kind of mooching off of him and doing crazy things and drinking and drugging a lot and sleeping with a variety of people from both genders. And he lived with Jim, and eventually he ends up dead. And so then there was some speculation that Jim did it. That part of it I love. What I didn't love, and why it's not a 5-star read for me, is it actually examines the entire town. And some of the other people in the town are wonderful too. There's a drag queen who plays a large part in this, and she plays a large part in the movie as well. There are other characters in town that are featured, and it reads more like a novel than it does like a nonfiction piece. But then there's also some things about zoning and redevelopment of Savannah. And there's a lot of history of Savannah, and there's a lot of there's so many characters that really aren't central to, I guess they're central to the quirkiness of Savannah, which I will admit is a quirky place, and I do love it, and I'd like to go back. I'd really like to go back now and do some different things that we didn't do then. But yeah, if it had just been about the murder, kind of like the movie was, I probably would have liked it more. But it had some parts that I was just like, and I was listening to it as well as reading the physical copy, and I found myself sometimes just like, I don't think I understood what they just said. I think I zoned out, and then I didn't bother rewinding unless it was about Jim. So
okay, maybe that's why I was thinking of the H.H. Holmes book, because it's the one that you liked, that with the Chicago World's Fair, that you were a real big fan of.
That's Eric Larson. Yeah.
But my problem with that was I wanted it to be this story, but then it kept going into like the million different architects and all the
exactly the architect stuff in that one, which is called why can't I think of it?
Devil in the White City.
Devil in the White City. That was a hard read. And Eric Larson he's not quite as detailed as Eric Larson, but he's definitely detailed. Yeah. But it was good. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I finished it. You're welcome to read it if you'd like. But I still think in this case, which is odd for me, as you know, I would say I like the adaptation better than the book. Yeah.
That's rare. All right. Something new?
Yeah.
Okay, so my something new I really enjoyed. So I think I mentioned it in the last video that I was trying to read more nonfiction, specifically around marriage and how to, have a happy, functional marriage.
Yes.
So I read The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by Dr. John Gottman, who is the head of the Gottman Institute. It's this whole thing. And I listened to it on audio. And then I had to go buy the book because there's a lot of like exercises in here with like a bunch of different questions and like things that I just wanted to be able to see because, I'm not going to like type it all up while I'm listening. That's the dog. But it was really, really like of the nonfiction marriage books that I have read, and I've now read a good handful, this I think was the most impactful and the most useful. It was like not religious at all, which I liked. it did have like some mention of like religion, spirituality in there, but like in a practical way of like how to reconcile, if you and your partner have different beliefs on that or whatever. But he starts talking about how he, through all of his research, he can predict divorce with 91% accuracy based on watching a couple interact with each other. And then he, has then developed these 7 principles that just are like super useful about like how to speak to each other and what to look for when you're in the middle of a fight, and like how to make sure that you enhance your love maps, which means like you still know each other like intimately, like all of the details of your partner's life, who their best friend at work is, what's stressing them out, stuff like that. Which at this stage in our marriage, we've been married now for a week and a day, we're really good at. But like further down the line, and I see it with people that have been married a long time, like, can you name your partner's coworkers? Can you name like what is stressing them out about their job right now? Can you name like what goals they're working on? Some people can't, because they're just like, yeah, we've been married for 20 years. Like, I don't need to know who my partner's best friend is. Like, but
or you assume it's the same person, like you just don't
and you don't think to ask if anything is different. But things like that were really helpful. And also he's talking about something that I thought was really interesting, and I should look up the number on this because I don't remember numbers, but he's talking about marital conflict. And so there's 2 different types of marital conflict that he goes over, and one is like solvable problems and one is perpetual problems. Look, I found it. 69% of marital conflict is perpetual problems, and it's just things that like you'll never resolve, that you're gonna fight over and argue over and not agree with like forever. And I thought that number was really staggering, but like he talks about, kind of how to navigate that, like how you're going to have so many perpetual problems that you're just never going to agree on. So like what to do in that case. And I just thought it was really good. It's like really solid advice. I also followed him on TikTok then because I wanted to see, like what he says in that forum. And I'm really interested in looking at, like some of the other things that he's written, some of the other, stuff that he does. But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this in the bookstore the other day when we were shopping, and you said you were looking for it. And I used to do couples coaching, which was tricky when they weren't happy.
Yeah.
I would say. And there are a lot of people that can do couples coaching, and they're very good at it. And it's a very wonderful experience for them. And there are a lot of people that cannot, but they think they can. But that was something that a lot of them ended up being referred to over time, and some went, and they had very good experiences. But I also remember as a kid or younger person, really, this always has stuck out to me, these random details we can't ever sort of weed out of our brain when we're, processing and dumping information. But I remember this guy that was on TV. He was a chef. His name was the Galloping Gourmet. And he talked once in an interview with somebody about how he and his wife almost divorced over the way that they put the toilet paper on the holder, whether it came outside or underneath.
Yeah, no, it goes on the outside. I would divorce that too.
Goes underneath, but that's a personal preference, honestly. But he said it wasn't really about the, it's like that video. It's not about the nail. It's really not about the toilet paper. It's about something else. But we get just caught up in.
Yeah, and he talks too about couples counseling too with failing marriages, and how like really it doesn't work, and the majority of couples counseling is like centered around this idea of how to fight and how to communicate, which is really like show empathy and put yourself in your partner's shoes and try to imagine what they're feeling, and that in the moment of an argument you can't do that. Most people can't do that, so it's just useless information to tell somebody do this, but you actually can't. So instead he talks about things that you can do, like listen for repair attempts. These are the things that your partner might be saying that indicates that you need to take a break, and taking a break is actually really helpful because it gives you a second to like collect yourself and take a breath and like not be so heated. And so it was just really solid advice. So I'm going to probably read it again. And I told Jesse I want him to read it too, but we've already started like doing some of the exercises together. So yeah.
What a great start.
I really liked it. Yeah. That's something new.
All right. So my something new was my book of the month choice, which was The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz.
Oh, I'm just talking to a new friend that I made that just said that she had finished reading that and really
Well,
enjoyed it.
you're welcome to borrow it.
Okay, I want to because I was about to download it on audio, so now I won't because I didn't realize
You
that you
don't
had it.
have to. I own it. Yeah. So I gave this one. I didn't rate it. That's interesting. I think I was pondering. It's got a great premise and I couldn't really put it down. I mean, like it was a solid, let me keep going, keep going, keep going. It had some weirdness though. It took a turn that I wasn't expecting. And I think in the end I wasn't sure how I felt about it. But it it begins with this woman named Alex who's a writer, and she's given this opportunity to join this writing retreat with this woman who does these writing retreats, I guess yearly, and she only limits it to a small number of people and they all have to be writers. And during the retreat, which isn't, I think it's a month long, yes, during the retreat they have to write the entire novel. And then along the way, she gives them coaching and she gives them feedback on their writing and those kinds of things. And if they are the one who's chosen by her as the best, they get a 7-figure publishing deal.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an isolated, closed circle kind of thriller that takes some weird little detours in a way that is quite unique, I would say. So I liked it, definitely. I just am not sure. When I was done, I was like, oh, what just happened? So I recommend it. I think it has gotten pretty good ratings. I could tell you because I'm at, 3.51. So maybe there's some mixed bags there, but I love it. Like it's got snow. I mean, it really literally is. It was the perfect February read, even though we don't get snow here, but it just felt like I was there and I couldn't stop until I figured out what happened to these people. So
Right.
fun. Yeah. Also, I'll hold that. I won't put that in my non-existent bookshelves until you have read it. Yeah.
Well, I have one to bring you back that I just finished the other day too, so we'll just swap.
Yeah.
My something borrowed was from you, and it might have been, I know we were talking about it in the last video. I don't remember if you read it or if we were just talking about it, but it was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. No, The Family Remains by Lisa Jewell.
I did not read that one. I read The Family Upstairs. I did not read The Family
Remains. But I borrowed it from you, or I borrowed it from Scribd. I borrowed it from somewhere.
I think it's on my Libro, maybe.
Yeah. So I listened to that one, and it was okay. Like, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was a sequel. Sequels are never as good as the original. It was like following the same characters in sort of the aftermath of what had happened in the first book. And some of the things that they did, and some of the things that happened, I was like, that's not entirely believable. But it was okay. I, didn't love it, didn't hate it. I liked it. I wouldn't read it again though.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It wasn't as good as the first, but never is.
I mean, J.K. Rowling did okay with that, but a lot of people.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people don't. Okay. All right. So my something borrowed. I don't know. Maybe I told you I was reading this. I don't know. This might be a surprise for you. I read Spare, which is.
Oh, you did tell me you were reading that.
Yeah, Prince Harry's autobiography. This was also part of the writing retreat had nothing to do with my Mardi Gras readathon, but Spare actually did because it was read a book about royalty. But for me, this was borrowed from the library. I did not want to purchase it. I was hearing, I can hear you and it's not necessary. You're fine. I was hearing some buzz about it and I gave it 4 stars. Here's what's tricky about rating memoirs is you're essentially rating a person's story about their life.
Yeah. Is your life interesting enough to give
your life
5
2 stars or 5 stars, right? The life part was great because it really did give a lot of context to his experience with the death of his mom and with the challenging relationship at times with his brother and other people in the monarchy, and how the paparazzi played a huge part in his life. Still probably does to some degree, but of course we all know now, and it does go from birth really to where they are now, not living in the UK, not being, detaching themselves from the monarchy, which had to have been, and you can tell it was an agonizing decision. It really does paint a picture of, his wife, Meghan Markle, was really vilified by the media.
Yeah.
And his telling of his experience with her, of course, is extremely different, and of her support of him and of her fears for him and her fears for herself. And I mean, honestly, how does a guy like that ever date anybody, right? Successfully with with that level of introspection and that level of interest by billions of people around the world. I liked it. The reason it didn't have a 5-star for me, and again, I think it was about a 3.5, and I rounded it up to 4 because it's his life and it's his story. The reason it wasn't is the writing wasn't really. It was kind of just like, and then we did this, and then I did that, and
Did
then
he wrote it himself?
No, he had a ghostwriter, which is also interesting. So I think he had a partner anyway. He probably wrote parts of it himself, but it was just a telling. And at some point, maybe about halfway through, and I listened to it. So he was reading it too. He was, the narrator, which is always good because I think it makes it more like connected to the person. But it just became like, okay, now we're, it got to be same old, kind of this, and nothing ever really got resolved until they left and kind of stepped away. I'm glad I read it. So that was my borrowed. What's your blue?
All right, my something blue was The 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriages: How 15 Minutes a Day Will Help You Stay in Love. Brain Science Hacks That Boost Your Emotional, Spiritual, and Physical Connection by Marcus Warner and Chris M. Corsi.
Okay.
And I'll be honest, when I started talking about this book, I didn't remember what this book was about. But here's what I remember about this book.
So it wasn't memorable, first off.
It was not super memorable, but also what I remember is that I was listening to it on audio, and Jesse and I went for a hike. And it was somewhere new that we hadn't gone before. It was like an hour away. So I was like, all right, we can go on a hike, but I need to get this Something Blue book in. So we're going to listen to this book on the way, and then we can talk about it because, it's a marriage book. So we both listened to it. And I'm going to read directly from Goodreads here. It says, after each chapter, you're given 5-minute exercises, which done 3 times a day are proven to increase happiness in marriage. Plus, there's tons more exercises in the back of the book. So I swear, and no offense to Marcus Warner and Chris Corsi, but every single exercise ended the exact same way. It was like, and then you and your spouse should cuddle for 5 minutes and spend quiet rest and reflection time, and cuddle, like every single one. And so we got to the point where it was a joke. It's like a running joke. Every exercise we'd be like, and at the end, you're going to cuddle and rest and reflect for 5 minutes. And it was like, I honestly, all of the exercises blurred together for me. They were, pretty much like here, sit and have a conversation with your spouse about this and then cuddle. Like for this exercise, let's talk to your spouse about this, and then you should cuddle. And it was so redundant. And I don't even remember what the 4 habits were. They didn't stick in my mind. It just wasn't great, honestly. It was no John Gottman.
John Gottman's probably pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, and like it, it's got 3.85 stars on Goodreads, so I guess some people liked it. It just wasn't for me. It was really short. It was a really short read, so that was good because I needed to fit something else in. But it just didn't. I don't think there's anything in there that's stuck in my brain. So all you got to do to stay married is cuddle. That's right. What you got to do.
I mean, I do think that is a good idea because
it's definitely valid. But it's not the only thing.
But it's not always important to everyone. I remember when I did do this years ago, I did this assessment, and I can't remember the name of the guy that did it, but there were like 4 things, and one of those things was like your love language. It was probably called love language, 5 love languages. I think it was 5, not 4. Yeah. And one of them was physical touch. And, but some people don't care about physical touch, but some people care about acts of kindness or. Yep. Yeah, so it's
that's Gary Chapman. I read him last month.
Yes, it is Gary
Well,
Chapman.
in
Look
January.
at us giving all this marriage advice.
I'm basically an expert now.
And that's absolutely free to you. So that's your bonus gift for this this particular video. That's fun. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was your something blue?
My something blue was, I'm just having to look at, this is interesting because this is a theme right now. I'm reading so many thrillers back to back that they're starting to all run together and I can't remember what
That
they're
happens to
about. So
me
I'm going
too.
to take a break from thrillers, I think. But I say this as I'm finishing one soon. But Nine Lives by Peter Swanson.
Oh, I started that one, but I didn't get very far. I think I was just in a place where I
Yeah.
couldn't get into it.
I started it last year, I think, when I got it on Libro, and then
Yeah.
I didn't get very far in it. And then I thought, well, it's blue and it is, it's still there. And so I did like it. The second time around, I was in a place where I was ready to read it. And again, I had to take a moment to look at it to remember what it was about. But essentially, 9 different strangers receive a list with their names on it in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
And no explanation whatsoever. And they've never met. They don't have any idea why this happened or what is significant about this list. And then one of them dies.
You know what? I did finish that book.
Did you? Did you?
Just realized. I was like, wait a minute. Because then I started picturing all of the different characters and I was like, well, I had to have gotten farther than I thought.
Yeah.
And I looked it up. I finished it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it. I gave it 4 stars in the end. I liked it.
Wait, hold on. No, hold on. Nope. I'm confusing this with.
Well, that's the trouble.
Oh my gosh. I'm confusing this with 13 where he was on the jury because I'm thinking about the killer and I'm like, oh, I really liked him and he was really interesting and fun. But that was 13. And now I don't remember. I remember them all dying one by one. And I remember some of the ways that they died, but I don't remember who was behind it or how that ended up playing out.
Yeah. So it was kind of a take on. So the thing I love about Peter Swanson is this. He's a big Agatha Christie fan. And he also, kind of does some similar plots. So this wasn't like and then there were none because they weren't all in the same place and isolated. But it is kind of a, like we're going to look at you one by one and see what happens to you.
Yeah.
I was glad that I read it. And I do think that there's a couple other Peter Swansons. He has one that's called, and I don't know which order these go in, but I want to read both of them. The Kind Worth Saving and The Kind Worth Killing.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those.
About those. Yeah. So I might get that when I'm done taking a little break from thrillers. Yeah.
And I don't remember how it ends. So we're going to need to touch base after this video.
Yeah.
And remind me how they're all connected because I don't remember.
Yeah, yeah. I think the only reason I did as well as I did was again because I have the ability to listen to a lot of them, and so when I was doing different things, I could do that. But I have
same. I usually listen to a lot of them, but I was on my bachelorette cruise for
that's
February.
right.
And and I was like, and I brought a bunch of books. I was like, oh, I'll spend some time reading. I did not spend any time reading.
Well, you should not have.
Fun. Yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I also read, which was part of my Mardi Gras readathon, Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, by Paul Gallico. This one was a fulfillment of the Mardi Gras readathon prompt to read a book that was set in France, which was the original creations community of the Mardi Gras.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been wanting to watch the adaptation because an actress in the adaptation is a favorite of mine, but I didn't want to do that until I read the book, and I got it on Scribd, so it was actually also borrowed, but it was cute. It was good. I wouldn't say it was like earth-shattering. It was a 3-star read for me. It was solidly written, but the premise of it was really what got me, and there is a sequel, which is Mrs. Harris Goes to New York, which I might pick up at some point because it's actually bundled on Scribd in a 2-pack. Both of them are the same recording. But it follows a charwoman in England who is someone who cleans homes for a living. And she is a widow. And she cleans for a woman who is a horrible beast of a woman. But she has a Dior dress that Mrs. Harris finds one day when she's cleaning, and they start talking about the dress, and she is absolutely enthralled, and she makes it her mission to buy herself, to save all the money she can, figure out all the ways she can in which to accumulate the money to buy a dress from the house of, is it Dior? Let me just look. Is it Dior here? I'm telling you this, and I don't want to. It is. It's Dior. Thank God. I was like, I lost my mind. You know, I kind of lost my mind for a little while we were in this dress at the wedding, and now I've gotten it back, but I still don't trust that I have it back. It is delightful in many ways, really different than what I thought it was going to be, but also slightly predictable. So I love her character. I don't love the way it takes a turn.
Okay.
So that's what dug it down for me.
She gets hit by a bus.
No, no, thank God that's not true, or I would have made a face. No, but honestly, it was
on a baguette, on a croissant.
No,
I should write books.
On a croissant. It's funny because I also love that aspect of it too, because, you know, I took French in high school. You took French in high school. Like, you know, that is one of my favorite languages, and just to be in that space, and, you know, and that's, I think, what makes the movie even better, because you have a little bit of the French atmosphere in it that you can visually see, but it's good. And I'm happy that I read it. I really am. And I might read Mrs. Harris Goes to New York when I need a palate cleanser. That's what I would say it is. If you've read a lot of thrillers, or if you read something really heavy, which I really did in the month of February, it's a great palate cleanser because it's easy and it doesn't require a lot of chewing.
Cool.
And then I also read, which I loved, Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. Oh my God, this book just.
I remember you talking about that one.
Yeah, you got to read this one. It's on my Kindle. I really did not expect it to be beautifully written as it was. And it is multi-layered. It was a 5-star read for me. It was multi-layered, lots of characters, which I think does put some people off.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what did it for me was it's a very unique premise. So the plot, the way it's written on Goodreads is this: the first line is, we can't choose what we inherit, but can we choose who we become? And that essentially is the theme of this entire book. But this woman dies, and her children, who have been estranged, and her daughter in particular has been estranged even from her, come to where she lived and for the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And because they have a Jamaican ancestry, the tradition is to eat a black cake on the funeral day, or the time when your ancestor or your person dies.
Mm-hmm.
And she had made a black cake for them, and she left them a series of instructions about how they were to, and what they were to do, and how they were to consume this black cake, and what she wanted them to know. It then goes into this history of her life and her experiences. It's so unexpected. It was, for me anyway, so unexpectedly beautiful and poignant and rich and deep. And it was filled with hardship, and it was filled with connections that you didn't see coming. At least I didn't see them coming. And just this, like, it just wrapped up in this way that you were just like, oh my God, I can't, that was just so beautiful. Like, I just can't. But essentially, she brings these children home because she wants them not only to understand her full story and what she had to do in her life as a result of these circumstances, mm-hmm. but also she wanted them to understand that they needed to be reconnected. They needed to, to find themselves and to find each other again around this, mm-hmm. around this black cake, around this experience of being with her and her ancestry. I really think you should read it, but I can't tell you what to do. I absolutely loved it. I think you can get it to listen to too, because I feel like I did, but I got it on ebook because it was $2.99 one day, and I was like, oh my God, this has been happening to me lately. I'm reading something. It happened to me today. I haven't started it yet, but there was something I wanted to read,
Mhm.
and it was $2.99. So that was my 6 books, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
6 books for February, and that was definitely, I saved the best for last for sure.
Nice.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us for our February wrap up, our wedding wrap up. And I hope some of these books inspired you. And if you thought of other books that remind you of these books that you would recommend to us, we're open to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for being with us, and happy reading. Bye.